Hello fellow woodworkers and makers of great things. Welcome to my shop. Today I am working on a set of 4 doors. Each of these doors will pair with another as a bifold, so I'll have 2 sets of bifold doors in the end. And what I've done is I milled the stock for the stiles. Stiles are the long, long pieces, and the rails, which are the bottom, top, and mid pieces. And now what I need to do is cut mortise and tenons in all these joints to bring them together. So what I'll have with this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 mortise and tenon joints in each door. That's a total of 40. So we've got to find a pretty productive way to cut them. There is the rest of the stile stock behind it. There's the rest of the rail pieces sitting on top of the lathe there. So you'll know from a previous video that my preferred method of mortise, cutting a mortise, is with the hollow chisel mortise. I really like it, but I've got a problem. These stiles are nearly 7 feet long. There's one on the bench there. So it's 7 feet long. I'm not going to be able to position the mortiser anywhere in my shop that I can that I can make all those mortises without constantly moving the mortising machine around on the bench. To do it properly, I would need 14 feet, 7 feet left and 17 feet right of the mortising machine, so I can move the stock through it and start cutting mortises. My shop, unfortunately, is only 12 feet from wall to wall, so there's just no way to do it. So the tool of choice today will be the router. We're going to set up a router with a spiral upcut bit and a fence like that, and we are going to cut these mortises with a router. Again, not my favorite thing to do, but with the router I can just clamp that piece to the bench and start cutting mortises, and I'm moving the tool as I go. I don't have to move the stock, so I'm in a much better position. So why don't I get that router set up, show you the layout on a test piece, and we'll cut a mortise on the router. Be right back. I've taken a minute to lay out the mortise in a sample piece. So this is a cutoff from one of the stiles, and it is exactly the dimensions of a stile, so I can use that as a great setup source. And what I've did is I've located the mortise, pardon me, relative to this 4 3/8 inch rail that will come in from this direction into the board. So the mortise I want is going to be a 1/2 inch, leaving a 3/8 inch shoulder all the way around the piece, and the depth of the mortise will be 7/8 inches into the wood. So that's what I'm going for here. And to accomplish that, I've set up the router. You swing that in here for you, and I think you can see that. We may have to get you back a little further. Hang on, guys, let me adjust this. If I can't get you a full view of what I'm doing, it would still give you some detail. Okay, so a couple of things with the router. Critical setups. I have centered the pardon me. I centered the bit in the stock. So took a measurement so that the center of that bit will fall right in the middle of this mortise. Hopefully, it's going to be close. And then the second critical dimension was to get the depth of cut to 7/8 of an inch, which I have there. So I'm good. This is a plunge router, so when I release this knob, this will come up. I'll come in, I'll plunge into the wood, take about half the cut, and then I'll bring it right down to this stop here, and I know I'm at 7/8, and I'll finish the depth of cut with that. So those are the critical dimensions on the router. Pretty straightforward. The fence will register the piece with the cutter in the center. We'll plunge the router into the stock, and then we'll move it through, take it out, and we'll have a mortise. All right. So why don't I set up in the vise for that, and we'll cut a mortise. Okay, so getting set up to make this this cut. A couple things I want to mention. My original intention was to go with an upcut spiral bit. Instead, I've got a straight cut in there, and the reason is this is an upcut spiral bit. The reason is the largest one I have is only 3/8 inches wide, so I would have to make this mortise in 2 passes, and since I've got 40 of them to cut, I thought I would just go with a straight cut bit. It's going to be fine. I've done it before. The idea with this bit is as it's going down into the wood, the spiral, like a drill bit, it's pulling the chips up. Mostly important on that very first plunge where there's nowhere for the chips to go. But we'll be fine. We'll be just fine with this. The second thing is I like this router. It's great because it's got super dust collection here. It's got this little fixture that goes on and brings the dust up through the vacuum hose here. So that's really good. But the bad thing is it's very difficult to look down at the bit through this plastic distortion. It's got a curve to it. It's got a piece here that doubles up and moves. So it's a little hard to see your mark. Get that back over there. What am I doing wrong? There's probably a hole to that. There we go. So what I decided to do, since I have so many to cut, is I made a little jig here, and if I put this on even with the end of the mortise here, and make a reference line here, and then do the same thing on the other side here, I can now reference off the router plate, so I know when this portion gets to that mark, I'm good. Same way on the back here, which you guys probably can't see. But that gives me my length of cut measurement. So that's what's going on. Let's give this kit a try. I'm going to turn on the dust collector here. Actually, it's a shop vac. Set my back mark for the reference I just created. So I've taken about half of the material out there. Now I'm going to take it all the way down. And finish the cut. There's quite a bit of sawdust left in here. Because again, I'm using a straight cut bit instead of an upcut bit. Let me turn that shop back off. And you can see, I think, that we got a nice mortise there. Looks pretty well centered. We'll find that out for sure when we cut and fit the tenons. The tenons will be centered because of the way I'm cutting them on the table saw. So if I'm a little bit left or right, even by a couple of thousandths of an inch, I'll notice that the tenon's going to be a little long on one side, short on the other side. But we can tweak that with the setup here. This has a micro adjust. This was just a test piece, but it looks like it is smack on between those lines. So I think we're going to be okay. And that's how I do it. One comment. This is this Festool router. Oh, I got it maybe a couple of years ago. I'm used to a more traditional router with a with vertical handles or a D handle. I like everything about this router, especially the dust collection, the precision of the setup, the micro adjusts. It's just a great router, variable speed. The only thing I'm having trouble getting used to is this horizontal pistol grip. It just, after 30 some years of holding a router like this, or like this, you know, it's a little odd to hold it like this. I'm sure it's just a matter of me getting used to that. But other than that, it is really a nice router. The other cool thing I'll mention about it is that this power cord can be disconnected at the tool, which makes it real easy to make adjustments and setups, you know, without you know, walking across the room to the power cord and unplugging it. So you can safely deal with it at that point. So that's our mortise. I'm going to get on to cutting some tenons, and then what we'll do is we'll put a test tenon into our test mortise. We'll tweak it, and I'm going to tweak it until it's absolutely perfect. So I may have to adjust this router and do this another time, maybe 2 times. And the reason is, when that tenon goes in here, I don't want it to be overhanging or short on one side and overhanging or short on the other side. If I had 1 or 2 of these tenons to do and there was a little, you know, a couple of thousandths of an inch here, it's no big deal. You get out a hand plane, you bring everything smooth. But again, I got 40 of these. So if I'm not perfect on the mortise and tenon joint, I'm going to have to trim all of the rails on one side, then turn it over and trim all the stiles on the other side. That's a lot of work. So we're gonna do a little more fine tuning and setup when I get to the test tenon, and I'll bring it back for that. I've gone and set up the table saw so that I could start cutting tenons to match the mortises I've done with the router. And to do that, I've put in a stacked Dado cutter here. And you know, I didn't cover that in this video. In my video on building the electronics toolbox, I go over in detail how to work with a stacked Dado set if you're not familiar with it, so you might want to check that out. But what I'm trying to accomplish here is, if we go back to my mortise, we have 3/8 inch shoulders here and here on either side. So what I'm trying to do, or what I've done actually, is I've actually created a 3/8 inch shoulder on the tenon stock here. And the way I did that was to simply raise this blade to 3/8. Again, I don't know if I covered this in this video. This mark designates the arbor of the table saw, so that will be the highest point of travel on the blade. And you mark, or you check there for 3/8 of an inch. You probably got to tweak it. I had to take a couple of cuts to get it exactly right, so that when I put this board over this Dado set, I'm taking 3/8 of an inch off of this shoulder, and then I'm flipping it over. I'm taking 3/8 off of that shoulder, okay? And that's going to leave me the resulting 1/2 inch tenon. And I did that twice to get tweak that setup, and until it was just right, and would fit this mortise with hand pressure. It's snug, but it's just hand pressure to get it in there. You don't want to have to hammer these guys in, and equally important, you don't want them so loose that they fall right out if you go to lift up. So that worked out good. And the other thing I was concerned about when I was centering the router bit, if you recall in the first part of the video, I wanted to make sure this was flush, and boy, it is. So we are nice and flush here. This mortise will come in. There's a gap there because these shoulders aren't exactly square. I wasn't worried about that in the test cut. We'll show you how we're going to address that. But when that shoulder butts up there, I'm nice and flush there. I can barely feel any difference. So I'm very happy with that being centered like so. So now what we have to do is determine how long these tenons will be, and quite honestly, I haven't figured it out yet. What I know, and I think you can see this board, this is my rail stock. These are the pieces that go across the doors, and I rough cut them out oversized. They are 17 and a quarter inch long. What I really am concerned about is that I have 13 3/4 inside the mortises. So the reveal, when this is put together, I don't know if you can see the marks here and here. I want to get that 13 3/4 because that's the distance that the rails have to span in between the stiles. So in figuring that, and considering I overcut this stock to give myself some room, I've got a full 1 3/4 of tenon space. Now I won't need 1 3/4 of tenon because my stiles are only 2 inches wide, but In my test cut, I only put 7/8 of depth into this style. I can probably take a full inch, maybe even 1.25 inches. I don't know, I got to decide that. But for now, I'm going to cut these tenon stock, this tenon stock at 1.75 inches long, and I can trim them up later. So to get to my measurement of 1.75 inches, I put this stop here on the against the fence, and I measured until I was 1.75 inches. It's gonna be hard to see. 1.75 inches would be left when I made a cut. I took a test pass on the other end of this board, and I can check it right here that I've got the 1.75 inch mortise depth. I've gone and clamped this stop to the fence so I can make a bunch of cuts without worrying about it shifting. And what I'm going to do is put this up against that stop, make my first pass. I'm not going to get the full width of the tenon, so I'll slide the board back over. I'll make a second pass and finish the tenon. I'm going to flip it to this side, do the same thing, rotate the board this way, and do this end the same way. So it's going to be pretty straightforward. And let me turn the dust collector and we'll get on that right now. Okay, so I've taken my my tenons off the end, and I am left exactly with my 13 3/4 between the stiles, and that will give me, with 2-inch stiles, that will give me my 17 3/4 inch door width that I'm looking for. So as you can see, I had to take 3 passes because I couldn't get I couldn't clear the whole thing with 2, so I went back and kept taking out that middle. I think you saw that. No big deal. And now what I'll do is, when I'm done with all these passes, I'm going to stand this board on edge like this, using the same fence position here, and I'll cut the shoulders off here and here. Before I do that, I want to get all the cheeks cut, because, let's see, let me get my board. I want to get all the cheeks cut first at this setting without changing the height of the blade. I think I'm going to have to bring the height of the blade in. I've got to count for this rounded off mortise and decide whether I'm going to square these ends off or round these ends off, but I'll work that out. But for now, I can get all these cheek cuts so I can come back and cut these 2 shoulders off at the end. And that's going to take a while, and I'll be back and I'll let you know how I made out. And I've made all the cheek cuts on all the rails, and there they are on the bench. The bigger stack on the right side are the mid rails, the taller ones in the middle are the bottom rails, and the slightly taller ones on the left side are the top rails. And that's all the rails we need. The cheeks are cut. Next thing we have to do is cut the shoulders on the edges of the board. So to do that, I'm going to make a few adjustments. Let me bring the camera back into play for you a little bit here so we can show that. And I'll grab one of those rails. Show you what's going on. So we have our cheat cuts made, but the next thing we have to do is determine the length of this tenon. So we're going to take material off here, and we're going to take material off here. And I have determined that needed relief is 9/16 of an inch. And I've gone and taken my table saw blade, my Dado set, and I've raised it to 9/16 because I'm going to introduce the stock to the blade in this fashion. And so that's how we'll get that 9/16. We're going to maintain that shoulder, and to maintain that shoulder, what we'll do is we haven't moved the fence. We'll reposition this a little bit, but we're going to use the same stop block here that I've been using. And that stop block determines the shoulder. So if I hit that and come in here, I'm going to maintain this nice crisp shoulder around all four faces of the boards. And just like with the cheat cuts, I'm going to do this side. I'm going to do this side. I'm going to go to the end of the board and take off the other end. So one, I leave you on camera, and I'll get one cut, and then I'll let you guys not have to watch all the rest. And come back when I'm done. Dust collector. And there we have it, a finished rail, ready to go. Like I said, I'll finish the rest of those up off camera, and then I'll bring you back, and we'll get on with the next steps. Okay, so a little change to the router setup. You'll recall that for my trial cuts, I set the depth of cut to 7/8 of an inch. Because I wasn't sure, how everything was going to work out and how much tenon length I could ultimately get from my rails. So I've worked that out, and what I've done was taken a new depth on this plunge of 1 1/8. So my new mortise depth will be 1 1/8 inches into the stiles, and to accomplish that, I'm going to use the turret system on the router. So, and most plunge routers have this. So, right here is a turret with 1, 2, 3 stops. This lowest stop will be the full depth of cut. So you'll start here, run to this stop, and then you'll come in and you'll take a little more material on this stop, and then you'll come in and you'll finish the cut on the final stop. You don't, no way you want to take 1 inch and an eighth out in one pass. especially with a straight cut bit like that. So that's my plan. With the original mortise depth of 7/8, it was pretty easy to just go by feel. You plow about half of it out on the first pass, then you come back and you down the router to the bottom and finish the cut. But with an inch and an eighth, I think we need to be a little more measured in our approach. I've got these stop sets, so it's going to do an inch and an eighth is 9/8. So I've got each of these taking 3/8 of an inch off. These are adjusted just by screwing them up or down. There's a little friction bar built into the stud there that keeps it in place. So it's as simple as that. So that's what we're going to do. So let me set up for that, and I'll bring you back on, and we're going to make another trial cut before I start cutting into all these styles. One more minor change since our initial trial cut. If you recall, on the first trial cut, I had the mortise positions marked, and I had this stop block so that I can figure out where to stop my router. Well, that would mean that I would have to mark the mortise position on every single mortise, 40 mortises. I didn't want to do that. So what I did is I just shortened this block by 3/8 of an inch. Now I can take my stop positions from the end of the rail, not from the end of the mortise, and get just the same result. So again, what I do is I took this block and I shortened it by this 3/8 of an inch right here. So I'm good to go. So now I know if I start with my router base here, finish with my router base here, I'm going to be in the position I need to be. Get a lot of chips in that hole. That's the advantage of having an upcut spiral bit. There we have it. I think our setup is good to go. So let me set up the styles. One other thing, when I'm cutting let me turn that back off. You can see I'm backing up the piece I'm cutting with the second piece of the same size to give my base some support on this. When you're cutting the last mortise, which is only 3/8 inch off of the rail, obviously your router is going to be way back here. So what you want to do is you want to stagger or offset this backup piece so that when you put your router down, you still have ample support from that. And then when you get to the other end of the style, you'll just reverse it that way and set it up. I'm going to have to figure out a way to mark my depth here in a way that I can read it, but we'll work that out as we go. All right, let me get set up for putting a whole bunch of mortises and a whole bunch of styles. I've gone and laid out the rail positions on these two styles. And if you've watched any of my videos or know anything about me, the rule is we don't measure. And when we don't have to, we mark off of our work and we do repetitive activities and cuts that are all the same. So to do this, I first squared up the ends of my styles with my setup block here. And then took a top rail, and the top rail is slightly different size than the mid rails. Again, used my setup block, made sure that was flush with the end of the stile. I then put a pencil mark right here. Haven't measured anything yet. And came back with my square and marked that line. To get to the second tenon position, now I have to measure. It's 13 3/8. So, but I'm only going to measure the distance between the rails. So I took this down to 13 3/8, made a pencil mark, took my square, marked that mark. Then I took a piece of stock, a mid rail, kept a square, brought it over to the mark I just made, so I had the width, and then I came in here and made another pencil mark. So I'm taking this measurement off the stock, measuring 13 3/8, taking the measurement off the stock, etc., etc. So that's the layout routine. And I don't know if you can see this right here. Let me move the camera for you a little bit. I have marked this master. Now that I have these layouts lines exactly where I want them, I'm going to take the layout lines for every other style I cut from this board. And I'll probably gang them. I'll probably do 3 or 4 at a time, and just take this mark and bring it across to all the other boards, and every door will be exactly the same because I'm marking off of my work, and I'm not measuring when I don't have to. Let's get cutting some mortises. I had to pause there because, as you can see, I'm cutting 3 positions at once here because that's what's in camera range. I would do the whole board. I will do the whole board on the rest of them. But what was happening was my holes were filling up with with sawdust. Again, I don't have that upcut spiral bit, so the sawdust is accumulating in the hole. So before I made the final pass, I thought I'd take a minute and clear these mortises out, and then we'll knock it down to the final setting on the turret and finish it off. And there we have the first 3 mortises cut in place. So I'm just going to repeat this a whole bunch of times off camera, and you get the picture, and we'll see if we can't get one of these doors assembled. So the mortises got a little tight. I'm sorry, the tenons got a little tight for the mortises. These were cut about a week ago and have been sitting in the shop here. So they just picked up a little moisture, swelled a little bit. No big deal. What I'm using here is a rabbet plane. It's a block plane, but the difference is that the blade will go all the way smooth to an edge there. And I hope you can see that. But this edge, and I don't know if it's reflecting, is flush with the side of the plane. So when I come into here, I can cut the entire width right into the shoulder. And I'm finding that 4 passes, and these are very light, not much coming off of here, as you can see, very thin shavings, and just enough. 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's doing it. So I'm getting 4, sometimes 5 passes, and they're going into the tenons. They're going into the mortises nicely. So I just want to show you that because yeah, the day you cut them, they fit nicely. You know, a week later, they're a little loose or a little tight. So better tight than loose. We can always trim them down. And plus the glue, the moisture introduced from the glue when you put the joint together will swell it back up in the joint and make it really nice and tight. So thought I'd share that part with you. Okay, we have our first door, dry fit. Everything went together really well. Like I said, I had to toy with the tenons just a little bit, a few strokes with that rabbeting block plane, and they all went in nice and snug. That's just dry fit standing there, no clamps, everything square. I guess actually right now it makes a better ladder than a door. It needs to get, once I get the 4 of them done, I'll take them back apart, cut in the grooves, lay in the panels, then I can glue it up and they'll literally be a door. So there we go. I think I'll wrap this video here. The idea was talking about mortise and tenons, mortising with the router, tenons with the table saw, and there's the end result, or the purpose fulfilled. So thanks for watching. Always like sharing this stuff with you guys. Please do like, comment, and subscribe. That helps me. I want to keep bringing this kind of stuff to you if you enjoy it. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye-bye.